Hi everybody, and welcome to Sew Along with Jan and the April Kimberbell Mini Quilt. So we're going to work on this really cute little Eastery looking mini quilt today. This one was a little different. It was done with reverse applique, and there's 3 blocks here and 3 blocks here, and they're done differently. So there's 2 different ways to do these. So I'm going to show you each one in groups. So I'll do this row in a group and this row in a group to show you the 2 different ways of doing it. So what they did with these is that they did these in 2 hoopings with the back part is embroidered first, and then you use you make the egg little window on the top, and then the bottom one is you make the little egg window first, and then you put the applique on the top of the little eggs window. So they're a little different. And then we're also going to make this block here, the You're a Good Egg block, and it has some cute little freestanding lace flowers on it. So we're going to do that in the first video. And then these little sashing strips right here. So the little sashing strips are also going to need to be quilted. So what I'm going to do in the first video then is there'll be 4 videos to this for this mini quilt. So this is the first one. So in the first one, we're going to do You're a Good Egg. We're going to do that and do the quilting, and we're going to do the quilting on the sashing pieces. And I'm going to show you how to do the little flowers as freestanding lace. Okay, so we'll do that as the first video. The second video will be the top row with the applique that's done first, and then the window goes over the top, and then we'll do the ones that you put the applique on top of the window. So this was a little different. When I read a lot of stuff about it on Facebook and stuff, and people were confused about the instructions. So I really wanted to make a couple of these blocks before I did these videos, so I knew what I was doing, which I have. So the important thing is to print out the actual instructions that says mini quilts, for April. But then there's 3 more pages since we're doing these that we're quilting in the hoop, quilt block by block. You need 3 more pages of information. So there's 3 pages that's called reverse applique with block by block quilting. And make sure you print those out, and this helps you finish the blocks. So you use partially the instructions that are in here and partially the instructions that are in this document. So make sure you have those printed out also. Okay. So that was the thing that I found. After I found that out and I found the printouts, I thought, okay, well, this makes sense, because I could see what they were doing. I just couldn't decide how they were doing it. So I think it'll be fine. So we'll worry with this about this document in the second and third video. And in the first video, we're going to do the center section. We're going to do this whole center section, even though it's like part of it in the front of the instructions and part of it in the back. So we'll do that and do this whole center section first, okay? And then we'll do the little smaller blocks on either side. Okay, so let's talk first then about our fabrics. So we're going to talk about fabric and what you need to do. So let me get the page turned here. These have been really fun to do, and this one is very fun, and it's very cute, so I think you'll really enjoy it. It's just that the instructions are kind of spread out, and it makes it I think a little harder to find what you need for what you're doing. So, but I think I've got it figured out. We'll be fine, I think. So, all right, so let's talk about the thread first, and it gives you your little thread swatches here. And what I do is when I pull my threads, I find my fabrics first, and then I kind of match my threads up to my fabrics. Now I did have to add a couple of fabric or a couple of threads to mine, because my Good Egg little section in here was a little bit more minty green, so I added a couple of minty greens to mine in addition to the ones that are here. So I've got brother colors that I'm using for my thread. So I've got my 001 white. There's a nice yellow, and this one, the one I used for my yellow, is called Fashion Glow, and it is 1321, and it's a little bit more of a, it's not a bright yellow. It's a little bit more muted yellow. And then I have an orange that goes with my orange here, my orange fabric. And that one is, let's see here, 337. That one is reddish brown. And then I have a brown for the bunny rabbit, and the bunny rabbit is 1307 Cocoa. And then I have black, number 900 black. And then I have a light blue, which is called powder blue, and that's 1211. So I've got this one. I have a light lilac for my lavender, and it is 810, light lilac. And then I've got a light pink, which I used, mine was a little bit more on the peachy side, so I used light pink. Mine was called flesh pink, which is 124. And then you need kind of a peachy color, so I chose one called Mellow Melon, and that is, what number is that? 1209, I think, 1209. And then I used the old 085 pink for just the regular pink. So these are my colors that I have here, and plus my two extra kind of minty colors, because mine ended up being a little more minty. So mine are, these are light blue, which is 1226 for the lighter color, and the darker one is mint julep, which is 1293. So I have those two for this part. So we're actually going to use these two colors in the first video here. And I'm going to kind of put these up here on the machine, get them out of my way. I like that I can set some threads up on my machine now. Okay, so we're going to be using these two. So let's talk about our fabric. So then I just kind of, I don't always have every fabric that Kimberbell uses in this. So what I do is I just go through my stash and find things that are close in color. So, I needed a couple of whites and kind of a pink color, and a lavender and a couple of blues and kind of a minty color, couple of greens, couple of yellows, and so on. So I just kind of went down and figured it out. So then what I do is I take this color, the first one, and I cut what it tells me to cut out of that, and then I go down to the next one and cut out what they tell me to cut out of that. Then what I like to do is I just kind of lay them in, in order that I cut them. And then what I like to do is go through and figure out which blocks they go to, and then I put them all together. So like my ones that went with Good Egg, this is the background, this lighter kind of minty color. And then these two pieces are actually the sashing down here. So I have these sashing pieces that I cut, and I put those with my Good Egg block. So those are together. And then these were the colors I used with Bunny 1. Okay, so here's all and I already had all these cut out, and I just go through and find, here's Bunny 1 background, Bunny 1 lining, and this, then the egg, there was an egg for the other bunny here that's in that same color. So I just put them in little groups. Now these are the ones that I sewed out so that I could practice doing this new procedure. And so this is the one that I did the background first, and then you make the little egg frame, and then you put the background on it. So that one's not too bad. And then this one, you do the egg frame first, and then you put the applique on top. So this one's done with some embroidery leather. So I'll explain through those two blocks, but I just wanted to show you. So here's, some of my blues for Bunny 2. Here's my little pack. Here's my little pack for the Chick 2. Okay. And Bunny 3. And here's Chick 3. And again, I just took my fabrics and kind of matched my threads up to these. And here's Chick 1. And then I have some backing. You'll need some backing fabric. And then we're going to make a little fabric sleeve like we have on the other ones. So I have my 12 by 6 piece of fabric cut for my sleeve here. And I'll explain how to do that in the last video about the assembly. And I've got my 14 by 14 inch piece that goes on my back. Okay. The other thing I like to do is I like to go through the, and then I've got my binding. So here's my binding. Okay, so it's kind of pinkish. Okay. Now the other thing I like to do is I like to go through the blocks. So I usually go up here, and go into my blocks, and it tells you where you need to have shape flex put onto the back of your block. So I just went through each block, and I adhered my shape flex where it told me to. So like this Good Egg background, you need to have some on your background piece. Okay, so there's my background piece with the shape flex on it. Okay, and then let's see here, what's the next one? The little bunny. Yeah, the bunny, I did this first one. So that's when it tells you to put the shape flex on the wrong side of the background fabric, which is the largest piece, and the egg fabric, which is this kind of orangey piece. So that I have I have shape flex on those. Okay. So it was on this big piece here, and then this piece right here that we did the applique on. And then I just went through each one, and then that's what I like to do while I'm doing this so I can get all the shape flex cut. So this one, again, the wrong side of the background and the egg fabric for the little chick. So here's my chick. Here's my background fabric, the purple, and then the kind of peachy pinky color was also with shape flex on it. Okay, so I did that with each one of my blocks and got all my shape flex cut and put on. And then you also need, in the embellishment kit, for these, there was a little piece of the embroidery leather for the bunny. So this little kind of brown, rusty colored bunny color. And then there's a piece of this soft, fuzzy, like minky stuff for a couple of the bunnies. Okay, so that's for that. And then it told you to cut some pieces of the flex foam, the foamy stuff, and it's like back on this page right here, flexi foam. And I cut my little pieces of that and just stuck it in with my embellishment. So we're going to need those on some of the designs as well. Okay, so we'll have, that's the kind of things you need to have cut. You're going to need no-show mesh stabilizer, some water-soluble topping, because we're going to have some fuzzy stuff we need to cover up. And then you're going to need the wash away stabilizer, like sew-in wash, for the freestanding lace. So you're going to need several stabilizers for this. And we're going to start with the block, the first block here, and it's the Good Egg block. So we don't have to worry about our extra instructions until the next video. So I'm just going to set these aside so I don't get them, I don't lose them. And we're going to talk about You're a Good Egg. So this is a very basic block, but I wanted to show you getting it in the hoop and getting it quilted, because we are going to be quilting this in the hoop and get the quilting in there and everything and the batting. So we'll do that together, and I'll just turn it off while it's doing all the letters, because basically all it does is just the letters. But then I wanted to show you how to quilt the little sashing pieces on either side, and to do the water soluble. So with this being as long as it is, this piece is 14.5 by 4.5. Well, so we need to quilt this, and it's going to be quilted with a 12-inch piece. So it tells us down here that the option for block by block quilting is, the design is 2 by 12. So in other words, it's going to be 12.5 inches long. So I had to go up to my 9.5 by 14 hoop to do this one. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in my design. So let's see here. We're going to go in here to embroidery, and we're going to go into mini quilts. We're going to do the quilting first. So we're going to put our quilting in first, and then we're going to put our letters on top. So, and this one says to use the Easter 4. So we need Easter 4, and we need the 2 by 12 inch one. So it's this long skinny one here. And so when you look up here then at the top, see it says it's 12.5 by 2.5. So we need to make sure that we have a long enough hoop. So I've got my 9.5 by 14 hoop in. And let's see. Then we want to bring in the design that's called Good Egg. So I'm going to go ahead and hit set on that one. And these are going to come in centered. So we're going to go ahead and hit add. And we're going to go back to, let's see, mini quilts, embroidery files. We have to go to April. And this one's called You're a Good Egg. See if we can find it here. Here it is. So this one right here, You're a Good Egg. So it's going to be in one piece, and since I've got a big enough hoop, I'm going to do it that way. I'm going to hit set, and these are automatically going to come up centered on each other. Okay, so we're just going to hit embroidery here. Okay, so we're ready to go, and the first steps are going to be our quilting. So the quilting is always done in the same order. So the first, go back down here to the machine so you can see here. We will put my big hoop in here. This one's kind of tight, so I have to be a little careful with this one. There we go. Okay. I've got all my pieces here, so let me find the pieces I need for this one. Here's my good egg pieces. So we'll do this. Get the rest of them out of the way. And I need my batting, and I don't cut my batting. If you want to cut your batting, it is in the instructions, the sizes are in the instructions for the actual quilting. I just put my batting up and cut it off of a chunk. So I've just got a chunk of batting here. And I'm going to use my lighter green because I'm going to do the quilting for this one in the lighter green. That's what kind of matches. And we'll do this one in the darker green. All right, kind of a minty green. All right, so the first steps are going to be the quilting part. Whoops, helps if I thread the needle though. I didn't thread my needle. Let's get that threaded. Okay, so the first step in the quilting is always going to be the placement line for the batting. So we're just going to have a placement line on the no-show mesh. And if you wanted to conserve your stabilizer, you could have moved this all over to the side. But I don't know that I'm going to use this hoop for the second part of it. I think I'll use a shorter one. So it's fine. I'll just save it for something else. So we're going to get the placement line on here. I have a number 11 needle in my machine, and I have just regular bobbin thread in the bobbin. No show mesh in the hoop. All right, so then I'm going to lay my batting down over that placement line. My chunk, like I said, I just use chunks of batting. I have to trim it anyway, so I just use chunks. And then I'm going to sew, step number 2 is always the tack down for the batting. So we'll sew that with the same color. I'm just going to leave the same color in for this whole part of the design. That lighter green. I think it's called light blue. It happened to match my fabric pretty well. I was going to use one of the other colors, and I thought, no, I better use this, better add a couple more colors, because I had some mintier colors than what they had. So we'll put this in here. And of course, the little sashings need to be quilted as well. So that's why we'll do those in this video, so you can see the whole center section done, and then we'll move on to the little smaller blocks. Thought it might be easier to do it in the sections instead of having to jump around and go back and forth. So, all right, so we're going to have our tack down line, and I'm just going to trim my batting then close to the stitches. My hoop's kind of long, so you won't be able to see me trimming all the way, but I think I'm just trimming close to the stitches with my, I love my Ginger scissors, my little double curve scissors. These get you nice and close. This is Hobbs 80-20 batting that I use. This is what I use in my long arm. I really like this for the small pieces too, because it's a little loftier, so I get a nice definition for the quilting, yet it's still not stiff or heavy. So, but it's just a little bit loftier. All right, so we get our trimming done. Okay. And then the third step is always the placement line for the background fabric. I might need to press my fabric just a little bit. It's been folded in my bag here, so while that's going, I'll press a little bit. Okay, that looks better. Okay, so there's our placement line for our fabric. Then we're going to lay the fabric over the area here, and there's plenty of fabric, but try to get it as centered as possible. Okay, and then step number 4 is always the tack down line then for that background fabric. So we'll tack it down, trying to keep it straight. Get that done. Looks like I need to change my bobbin. Every now and then I get a bobbin that's just weird, and it likes to, you can see these little loose stitches right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just change my bobbin. Give me a second here. And it wasn't doing that earlier, so I think I put a different bobbin in. So let's get rid of that one. We'll just put the one in I was using earlier because it was not doing that before. Sometimes bobbins will just have a little rough spot on them too, and they'll just catch a little bit, you know. So if you're having funky little bobbin things, just change the bobbin, put a new bobbin in. Okay. And it even happens sometimes with like the ones you wind yourself. So sometimes your bobbins will just get old and they need to be replaced. Okay, so then step number 5 is always the quilting of the background. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this started now. Pause the camera for a minute while this quilts. So it's going to do the quilting. And then we will go on to the actual stitching of the center block. Okay, so we've got the quilting all done on our little center block, the You're a Good Egg block, and they did the lettering as the next part. So the lettering is going to be in pink. So I'm going to use my number 85 pink and do the lettering. And then we will be done, and we'll do a little trimming and stuff in a little while. So we'll do that at the end of the video. Because this one just is trimmed. This was trimmed a little differently too. So we'll trim the sashing and stuff too. We'll do everything together. All right. So the next step is going to be You're a Good Egg. And I'm just going to go ahead and get this started, and then I will stop the video for a little bit and come back, and then we will move on to the quilting of the sashing pieces. Okay, so we got You're a Good Egg all stitched onto the center of our, oops, sorry, there's folks next door that are walking next to my doorbell, evidently. So here's You're a Good Egg is all stitched on, and then the last step of this is actually some little trimming marks that will help us trim this. So the last step is just going to be some placement lines. And I'm just going to leave the pink in so I can see it. And we'll do these little lines that are going to help us know where to do the trimming, and we'll do that at the end. And then we'll be done with this block, and then we'll move on to the little sashings. The little sashings are going to go real quick, and we'll probably do a couple of hoopings. So I think I'm going to use the 10-inch, the 6 by 10-inch hoop for the little sashings, because you have to go about 14 inches. It's only 12, so it might actually be enough to do the 14, but I'll check the sizes. So I'll decide which hoop I'm going to use. So I'll be right back. This one's all done. I'll take this one out of the hoop now, and then we're going to come back and do the sashings that go on either side of this. Okay, so we're going to do the quilting on the sashings here. And the sashings were like 14.5 inches long, but this whole thing only ends up being about 12 inches wide. So I am going to use this 9.5 by 14 hoop, because then we're going to quilt both of these sashings in the same hooping. And we might have actually been able to do the 2 sashings and the You're a Good Egg all in one hooping, but I couldn't decide what size hoop I wanted to use. So, because I went in and looked at the size of the actual quilting part of it, and it's a full 14 inches. So we should be good with just doing one strip. Normally when you're doing borders, you often have to have like a 20-inch piece of fabric, and you have to quilt a section and then move on to another section. But one should work with the 14 inches for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here to embroidery. And we're going to use one called, I'm going to go into the mini quilts, and I think it was called Zigzag that they used for the sashing. So this Zigzag. Okay. And I'm going to use this 1 by 14 inch. So we cut our fabric 1.5 inches. It's 1.5 or 2. It might be 2 inches. Can't remember. I think it might have been 2 inches wide. Let me check the measurement here. Yes, 2 inches wide. And I'm going to get 2 of these. So we can do both of these in the same hooping, which is nice. So I'm going to set this one, and then I'm going to go back, and I'm actually just going to pull this over here, and I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate. So I have 2 of these, And I'm just going to leave a little space in between, you know, get them relatively lined up. And may have to select them. Let's select them here and make sure that they are aligned at the bottom, like that. So that way we know that they're aligned. And then I left a little space in between. And then I'm going to go to embroidery. Okay, it says change to a larger frame. So right now they're too big. So what I need to do is select them. Where's my select? Here we go. Select all. And I'm going to center them together so that they fit in the hoop. So they should fit in the hoop, okay then? So I had them selected all, and then I hit the little polka dot button here to center them. And now let's try embroidery, and it should go, yep, they go in that way. So now there's both of them are in there together. Well, I want to be able to do all of the steps together, so I'm going to do layout here. And I'm going to hit this little button right here, which is the color sort button. And Kimberbell makes all of their designs, you know, the same colors for each step. So I'm going to hit that button. And now when I go back, it's going to put all of the placement lines together, all of the tack down lines together, and, you know, like the fabric placement lines, the fabric tack down lines, and so on, so that I don't have to go back and forth and just do one at a time. So we're going to do both of these sashings at the same time. And then these should be just about the perfect size, because they're about 14.5 inches long. And so we're going to leave just a little bit at the top, and then there'll be just about a 1/4 of an inch at the bottom. And that should work out just about right, because it's just 14 inches, like 13.98. Okay, so I think I'm happy with my little design here. I'm going to go ahead, and this is always the same way for the borders as well. So this is actually a border design, that the first step is always the placement line for the batting. So we're going to go ahead over here, and we'll get ready to do this. And the first step is going to be our batting placement line. So what we're doing is just quilting those little sashings that we're going to put on either side of that good egg block. But I thought we might as well do all of the good egg block stuff all together, and we'll do the little bit of freestanding lace also. I'll show you how that works, and then we'll have that all done. And that's kind of in the back of the book towards the quilting, or towards the assembly, and so is this. But I figured let's just do this all together for the whole center section, so we have it all done together. All right, so we're getting ready for our batting. Got to get my chunk up here. And what's nice then is it's going to do both of my placement lines. Since I have the color sort button done, it's going to do both my placement lines here together. And then I don't have to, I can just do all the steps together instead of having to stop in between and do one and then do the other one. Now some of the machines don't have the color sort button, so if you have an older machine, you may not have that button. The Dream Machines and Destinies, I can't remember if they had them. I know that I have a machine so that does not have that button, so then I have to do this in software. But most of the machines have this button now, which makes it real handy to do this kind of projects. All right, so here's I'm going to get my chunk of batting ready here. I'm going to lay this over here, and just make sure you leave a little space in between so you have a little room to work with your fabrics. All right, so I'm going to lay my batting down over those lines. And then the second step is always the placement or the tack down line for your batting. And I just have my mint julep thread in that I'm going to use for the quilting. I just put the same color in and do the whole thing in the same color. And just my regular bobbin thread in the bobbin. Trying to keep this from moving on me here. I've got a bunch of hoops and stuff behind my machine I need to get moved so I won't knock everything off here. So see, it's going to do the first one, and then it's going to do the second one. I like the way the color sort, because when I'm doing these borders and stuff for these quilts and table toppers and all that, it makes it really fast to do it this way. I was trying to figure out how to do the videos for this quilt, because there's like all of this is kind of together, and then there's 3 little blocks that are done the same way, and the other 3 blocks are done the same way. So I thought, well, let's just do the embroidery in 3 videos, and then we'll do the assembly in the last one. So we'll do we'll kind of skip around a little bit in the instructions. So we'll get the tack down lines on here, and then we'll do the trimming on the batting. I think it has to go around it twice. Sorry, it takes a minute to get around when you're doing 2 of them. But at first I thought I'd do this in the 10-inch hoop, but then I thought, well, after I saw the design was a full 14 inches long, it should be fine with doing it this way, because then we don't have to, because my actual quilt's only going to be about 12 inches wide, or 12 and a half, so this should be plenty long enough. Okay, so now I'm going to trim these close to the stitches. You won't be able to see me trim down here at the bottom, but so we'll trim both of these. And then the next step will be the placement line for our fabric. And the placement line for the fabric is very important for these, since we have smaller pieces. We're going to have to do a different little procedure for these. So I'll show you how that works when we get there. Get this trimmed off here. And I think there probably would have been room in this hoop to do the good egg block plus both of these in the same hooping. So I could have conserved my stabilizer a little bit, but it's a little easier to do them separate, so that you're doing the same procedure in, instead of 2 different types of procedures. So, but if you want to do it in one hooping, I think you'd be able to have room in a 9.5 by 14. Oops, here. I always have a hard time trimming batting. There we go. Got the tip underneath the batting there. Get this one done. Up the other side. There we go. I need to turn down my phone. I'm sorry. There's people next door that are outside, and they keep setting off my Ring doorbell. So then we're going to go ahead and do step number 4, which is going to be the placement line for the fabrics on here. And this is going to be done a little differently than sometimes. I usually use some, I've got my little glue stick. I like these little Soline glue sticks for this, because then I can put the glue in between the batting and the stitching line. And we'll lay this out so that it'll lay right in here. And they're making about 1/4 of an inch around. And we'll leave about 1/4 of an inch at the top and the bottom, and that should be just about perfect on this particular one. And we should be able to quilt it all in one design. I wasn't sure. When I looked at it, I thought, oh, maybe it won't be quite long enough that I'll have to do it in 2, but it is going to be fine. So, all right. So get around there. Gotta find my glue stick. So this little Soline glue stick works very well for this. And what we're going to do, let me turn this way so you can see a little bit better. So I'm going to turn this kind of sideways for you, and I'm going to put some glue stick up here at the top on both sides. So I'll put the glue stick here and here, and then I'm going to take my strip and I'm going to center it over my line here and leave it about 1/4 of an inch or so above the top of the batting, roughly. Doesn't need to be perfect, but that's the best. Okay, and then we're going to do that, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. They've started cutting the fabric, just so you know, they've started cutting it a little wider. They didn't cut it as wide as they when they first started doing these, and they fit exactly in here. So this was 1.5 inches. This is 1 inch, so this would make it 1.5, and they did this at 2. So you're going to have a little extra fabric to kind of center here, and that's fine. So we'll just be cutting a little extra off because I think they end up being 1.5. So, but I kind of liked just the actual size because I didn't ever have any trouble. But see if I got this one kind of centered. I think I did. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to flip these back, and I'm going to take my, I'll just do one at a time here. And I'm just going to take my glue stick and just run my glue stick down along the edge there of the batting, between the line and the batting. I'm just going to pull my little strip down and stick it down to my stabilizer here, all the way down. And it looks like it did pretty well getting it centered the long way, so I think we'll be okay. So I'll flip this back and do the same thing for the bottom part here. Put a little bit of glue at the bottom. But this works really well. The little glue works well. I think they originally tell you to tape it, and I've always had trouble with tape, like it wants to let go. And this little glue stick trick works very well. Okay, so get that all on there, and let's do the other one. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So they've started cutting everything about 1/2 inch wider, I've noticed. So we'll do this. Just center it the best I can. Stick it down to the glue. Looks like I need a little more glue here. So we're going to go along here, and then I'm going to go along the bottom too. Stick it all down. Try to keep it as straight as possible. Okay. All right. So there's our 2 strips. They're all glued down now. I'm going to put this back in the machine, and then the next step is going to be the tack down line for the fabric. It's going to tack all that fabric down so we don't have to worry about it scooching. And the tape, or I should say the glue, really keeps it from scooching, so it works very well. So we're going to have just a little bit larger, little bit more fabric to cut off, so that's fine, because they, like I said, they started making them a little wider maybe in the last year or so, because I've noticed the last couple of newer designs I've done have been a little bit wider. They make the fabric a little wider, because they used to keep it and you'd put it right inside that line, but now they make it about 1/2 inch wider. So all right, so it's going to do that, and then it's going to do this one, and then the last steps of the sashings will just be the quilting, and it's just going to quilt them, and then we'll be all done with our 2 sashings. So we're going to go ahead and let this come down, and I'll start the quilting, and then I will stop the camera for a little bit while it works, and then we will also do the little flowers that are going to be done on water soluble stabilizer and done as freestanding lace. So we'll do those also in this video. And that'll all be the stuff that will be in the center block area. So, all right, so there's the tack downs. And then the next step will be the 2 quilting. I'm just going to leave that same color in. I've got my mint julep in. It's going to kind of match my fabric. And I'm just going to put that in and start the quilting, and I'll be back when all the quilting is done. Okay, so we got our little sashings all quilted, and they have like a little diamond shape on them. Isn't that cute? It has that cute little diamond shape on them. So that's going to be, those are all going to be done. And then we'll do some trimming at the end, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the water soluble portion, which is going to be our flowers. Give me a second here. And I have this one fits in a 4x4 hoop, and I was looking at the instructions, and it doesn't say to change. So let me show you where the pages are of what we're doing here. So we're going to go back and do our trimming. This is on page 7 of the instructions for the good egg. And that's the section that we're working on for the first one. And then let's see. Okay, so then the section about the sashings is back here on page 25, where it talks about the assembly. So finishing the quilt, the optional quilting designs, and as the sashing is quilted using the border quilting instructions provided with the quilting design. The sample uses this 1-inch one. So here's these. Okay, so it's talking about it here, and these are 1.5, so they're going to be trimmed 1.5 by 12.5 when we go to trim those. And then the next section we're going to do is the little embroidered flowers, the little freestanding lace flowers with the, and that's on page 24 of the instructions. And I was looking at the instructions, and it doesn't say to use matching thread in the bobbin, but I am going to do that because it makes them a little bit thicker and a little stiffer. So the colors that I'm going to use, there's kind of a peachy color, a yellow, and a pink. So I'm going to use, and then the centers are white. So I am going to wind some bobbins of those 3 colors so that I can use matching thread in the bobbin. And we're going to use 2 layers of water-soluble, this is my sew and wash, my dime sew and wash, and I've got 2 layers in my 4x4 hoop here to make my flowers. So you do want 2 layers to make it nice and stiff. In the instructions, they're talking about using the tacky stabilizer and then sticking another piece on top. That is totally unnecessary, and the tacky stabilizer is way too expensive to do that. So I just use the standard water-soluble, the sew and wash, or that's my dime, and it's the fibrous type wash away. And I've just got 2 layers in there, okay, in my hoop, in my 4x4 hoop. So that's what we're going to use. So give me a moment. I'm going to wind my bobbins, and then we'll start our lace so you can see what the little lace flowers will look like. Okay, so let's go get our design. It's called Dimensional Flowers, and it's in a 4x4 hoop, which is nice. So let's see here. Get the right one. Embroidery, April. Probably down here somewhere. Here we go. So here's our little flowers. Okay, now like I said, I did wind bobbins that matched my embroidery thread. I like to do my freestanding lace that way. I find that they're just a little bit stiffer then. So I did go ahead and wind bobbins. It doesn't tell you to, but normally they do it that way. But these are actually going to be kind of like glued down onto the fabric, so you probably wouldn't see the back. But I just feel like they'll be maybe a little stiffer and a little bit more, have a little more substance to them if I do it this way. Okay, so the first color is going to be my kind of melon color. So let's go ahead and set this. We'll go over here. And the first 3 are going to be kind of a melon. My melon, it's called Mellow Melon is my thread. And I'm going to go ahead and I've got that in my bobbin as well. Got my 2 layers. Remember, 2 layers of the fibrous style water soluble, which is, in my case, it's sew and wash because I have dime. Okay, and we're going to do the first 3 colors and the first three flowers, and then the second 3 flowers are done in kind of a light pink, and there's a couple of flowers done in yellow. So I'll come back in a moment when I'm done with the peachy color so that we can move on to the next color. Okay, so I'm ready for my second color for my flowers, and the second color is the yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and put my yellow, which is called Fashion Glow, in my bobbin here. Let's put my bobbin in, and then I'm going to put my hoop back on and thread my machine with my yellow to make my flowers. So there's the little peachy flowers. And there's going to be some little centers in them too. Whoops, got a little knot here. There we go. I'll go ahead and put this on. For the second color will be yellow flowers. Second here, I've got something stuck. Every now and then my thread likes to loop around the little flipper that flips the thread out of the way. So if I don't get that out of the way, sometimes it makes a mess. So I think it'll be okay now. There we go. All right, so we're off to do the yellow. And then the last color on these, or I'm sorry, the third color will be the pink, and then we'll do some white centers. Okay, so the third color of my flowers is going to be my lighter pink, which is called flesh pink. So I'm trying to find my bobbin here. Here we go. Put that in for that. And I've already got that threaded in my needle, and then there's going to be 3 little pink flowers. So we'll do those, and then we'll come back and do the little centers, and I think those are done in white. Okay, so the final color for our little flowers, so here's all, aren't they pretty? So those are all going to go along they're going to be kind of glued on to the middle where the "You're a Good Egg" little sentiment is. So those are so cute, and I like it that I did the matching thread on the back, makes them a little thicker. So on the white is going to be the little centers of the flowers, and I'm just going to go ahead and put in white bobbin thread for that. Since it's white, I think that that'll be sufficient to put the white bobbin thread in and get that in there. And then we'll go ahead and thread up our white here and do, whoops, here, I've got pink in the way here. There we go. So I'll go ahead and put the white thread in and then do the little centers, and then we'll be done with our little flowers. Aren't those cute? And just made one nice little hooping for the flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and do the centers now. And then I'll be back when those are done, and we'll get ready to do some trimming. Okay, so there's all our little freestanding flowers, and I'm going to go ahead and put them, I'm going to go ahead and take these out of the hoop now, and I'm going to just trim with my scissors up around the flowers, the stabilizer. I can use these other pieces of stabilizer like in the bottom of my hoop for some other projects, so I don't like to like rinse away all the stabilizer. So then I'll take this to my sink in the bathroom and use this, use some warm water and just soak out the water soluble. Don't let them soak too long because, and you do want to use warm water because the warm water will let it dissolve easier. But don't let them soak too long, otherwise they get kind of soft, and we want them to have a little bit of stiffness to them. And then I'm just going to set them aside to dry. Normally I pin like everything down on a piece of styrofoam, but on these I think I want my flowers to have a little bit of dimension, so I think I'm just going to lay them down on a mat and let them dry, so they'll probably cup up just a little bit and give me some extra dimension on these. So I'll do that and let them dry, and then I'll show you what they look like when I'm ready to put the quilt together on the last video. Okay, so give me just a moment. I'm going to turn the camera off for just a moment, and I'm going to switch it over so that we can do our trimming. So we need to trim our sashing strips and the You're a Good Egg block, and then we'll be done with this portion of the little quilt. So here's my cute little flowers. We'll lay them there so I won't lose them, and I'll be back in a moment to do the trimming. Okay, so we're going to do our trimming on the block here, and this is You're a Good Egg. So this one says it needs to be 12.5 by 2.5. So it tells you to locate the little tick marks, and remember the last step was this little these little guidelines here for us. So these are the little tick marks they're talking about, and it says to mark 6¼ inches to the left and to the right of that little tick mark. So these are going to be 12.5 inches. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to put the 6¼ inch mark on both sides of that. Let's make sure I got it right here. And then I'm going to use my marking pen and just make sure that I have that right on the line. And I'm just going to use my marking pen here and mark the end so that I know. And because the outline of the stitching line is going to be close, but it's not going to be exact because the fabric would have shrunk up just a little bit. So you will notice that you'll be probably just slightly outside of that mark at the end. I'm going to get this one and do the same thing on this side. Get it all lined up. There we go. I'm just going to mark the end there. Okay. So my ends were just a little off, which is normal because it's gonna pull in just a little bit. Let me turn my page here and see what it tells me to do. This is on page 7 of the instructions. So I'm turning to page 8. Let's see what it says to do. It says measure, yeah, that was the second side. Place a ruler along the top trimming guide and mark the top trimming line along the full length of the block. So you can use the line. This is 2.5 inches wide. I measured this earlier, so I think I'm just going to trim it instead of doing all this marking. So it is 2.5 inches from this top line to this line. This was a little bit more accurate this way because it's a smaller area, but when you get this length, sometimes it's a little off. So I'm just going to go ahead and I don't have to mark it. I can see the line okay, and I'm just going to trim it. So I'm going to go ahead and trim along that line, that kind of basting line where the pink was. I'm having a little trouble here because let me go get my other ruler quick here because this one's a little long. It's a little easier to work on this with my sewing machine here. Okay, there we go. So we're going to go ahead and trim right along this line where that pink little trimming line was. So we're going to trim along there. Okay. And we're going to do the other side, and that's our 2.5 inches. Yeah, 2.5 inches. Because I measured that earlier, so that should be fine. So we'll turn this over. And then you can tell I'm just going to make sure that my 2.5 inch mark is on the bottom here, and that looks good. So it looks like it's very true for the width anyway. So I'll go ahead and trim this side. Looks good. And then we're going to trim the ends where our marks are. So I'll probably trim just right on the mark. And this is a nice 2.5 inches. That turned out very nicely for this width. Go here, right on the mark there. And I'll turn it over and then we'll know for sure that it's good 12.5. Oops, turn it this way. There's our 12.5. Oh yeah, that looks real good. So I think we'll be fine. Get our 12.5 in there and trim this end off. There we go. So there is our 2.5 by 12.5 inch block for the You're a Good Egg. So it'll be in the center, and now let's trim our 2 little sashing strips that we made. So these, I noticed that there was a little, since they started making this fabric a little wider, it's a little harder to figure out how to trim these because these needed to be, and the measurement, just so you know, the measurement for these little sashing strips needs to be 1.5 inches, and that measurement is on page 25. So it shows it here that it's 1.5 inches wide and 12.5 inches long. Well, they used to always make the fabrics 1.5, so then it was real easy to trim these. But now we actually have to trim it on this line that was our placement line, so it's a little harder. So what I figured out is if I took my ruler, so this is 1.25 inches from one basting line to the other basting line, and so we're going to need to add 1/8 of an inch on each side to make it 1.5. So I'm just going to put my 1/8 inch mark of my ruler on the top line here. And we'll trim it across there because they made these pieces like 2 inches wide, so it made it a little bit harder to trim it. Okay, I think they were maybe making coming up a little short for people or something. I never had any trouble with them, so I always trimmed mine that way, and it was nice to have the little lines then. And then this one I'm going to put my 1/8 inch mark. We'll do the outside one here. Put my 1/8 inch mark of my ruler on that stitching line. We'll trim that one. Get those out of our way. And then let's turn it over and we'll do the inside. So then we'll know for sure we're a nice 1.5, because if we look down here, we can see the 1.5 inch mark, and we'll put the 1/8 inch mark on that basting line on the top there. So then we should be just fine for length, for width there. And then we'll worry about the length here in a minute. Got that? So that's 1.5. Let's do this one. Let's turn it over here and we'll do this one. Make sure we got our nice 1.5 with the 1/8 inch on the top mark here. That looks good. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. It's a little hard for the camera over here because it's not quite, everything's pretty close over here, so hopefully you can see me. Okay, so let's get these out of our way. And then we want these to be 12.5 inches. So you could do one of two things. You can just cut it off, and that would be absolutely fine, because there's going to be a little, one end will have a little bit of batting in the seam and one end won't. And it doesn't really matter, except I was thinking about it, and these are going to be in my binding. So I thought, well, it would be nice to have the batting in there, because it's going to go all the way out to the outside edge. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim this down and kind of trim off, you know, the end that doesn't have any batting in it. And there's a little bit here, so I'm just going to kind of trim that down. And then we'll trim it down to 12.5, because then I know there's going to be batting in my seam on the outside. So I'll just trim that down just a little bit, and then we'll trim this down to 12.5. Make sure I get my measurement right. Better check. It's always good to check twice, you know. I think it said 12.5. Yep, 12.5 by 1.5. Okay. So then I'm going to put this on my 12.5 inch mark. And then this way there'll be batting in both ends, which will be up, you know, next to where the binding is going to be. So we'll do this here. Let's pull this down. I'm doing 12.5 inches here. Okay. And we'll trim this off. There we go. 12.5 inches. Remember, these were about 14. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with this one. I'm going to trim that little teeny bit of batting off, or the little teeny bit of just the fabric off the end there. And then we'll use our mark for 12.5 inches. Do this one for 12.5. Make sure it's nice and straight. All right. Maybe. I have a hard time with the round mat when I'm trying to use a square ruler on it. I love it for the, there we go. All right, so there's our two 12.5 inch sashings, and here's our block. And then these are going to go on either side of our You're a Good Egg block. So we're going to be sewing those together there, like that. And then the little flowers are going to go along up and around the letters. So isn't that cute? So there's our little sashings are all done, and our block. And then I'll show you the little flowers once I get them all soaked out. So I'm going to go soak these out in my sink and let them dry. And then we will put these on around this once we get the little quilt put together. So thank you so much for joining me for the first video of the April mini quilt from Kimberbell. And we will continue on with the second video, and we're going to be starting to do the little small blocks that are reverse applique. So the first ones are going to be reverse applique blocks. It's going to be similar to the bunny here, that we're going to be doing this in one hooping, so that we're going to do the hooping to make the little egg reverse applique here, and then we're going to be putting an applique on the top. So that's the first ones we're going to do. And then the second ones will be kind of the reverse, that we're going to be doing these in two hoopings, and then the underneath part of the egg will have quilting or embroidery, and then we will do the little egg applique on the top. So that's going to be the second, and the third video is the little the small blocks, the small egg blocks that go along the top and the bottom of this section that we did today. So thank you so much for joining me. And if you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up on YouTube. And and also if you haven't subscribed to my channel, it's free. You don't have to pay anything to subscribe. And then you will get notifications and so on when I do new videos. So if you go ahead and do that, that would be wonderful. So thank you so much. And I'll see you in video 2 for the little the reverse applique blocks. Thanks, everybody.